Hello and welcome to this session as part of the buildingSMART International Summit, Singapore 2025. Thank you for joining. My name is Laura and I will be your moderator today. Today's session is titled BIM+GIS, Integration from Vision to Action. The speakers for this session are shown on the screen. This session is scheduled to last 90 minutes, including time for questions at the end. The session is being recorded and will be made available on the replay section of the event as soon as possible. Before I hand over to the speakers, I would like to remind you that this is an hybrid event. For online attendee, your microphone will remain muted for the duration of this session. If you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please use the chat box in the control panel. For the attendee here in the room, please keep the background noise to a minimum. And if you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please raise your hand or use a microphone. I would also like to bring to your attention that buildingSMART is committing to ensuring that participation in the development of standards is unrestricted and the process to their adoption is transparent, and standards that developed do not favor any particular provider and are open, non-binding, and accessible to all. Please take note of our antitrust code of conduct, and now I would like to hand over to Jack.
Great. Thank you very much for the introduction there. This session is sort of an ongoing session. This topic of BIM and GIS is certainly an important one to the buildingSMART community and the AECO industry in general. I'm Mark Goldman. My day job is the director of AEC Industry Solutions at Esri, a GIS software company, and I have a long history in CAD and BIM and construction information. I sit on the Infrastructure Steering Committee, Infrastructure Domain Steering Committee, focusing on GIS workflows in infrastructure. Just maybe a quick show of hands. Who was at the conference in Lillestrøm? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. Okay. Who was at the conference in Valencia? Okay, a few more. In Lillestrøm, Jag, who will introduce himself in a moment, led a session that was probably about a similar size group as this, kicking off the fact that a roadmap had been developed between OGC and BSI. We introduced the concepts of working together across the organizations to move forward the success with BIM and GIS working together. In Valencia, we held a workshop with maybe about twice as many people who are currently here, but people keep coming in, so who knows, we might have an equal amount, where we polled the audience. We presented, discussed, and got feedback from the audience, both by raising hands and participating with a Menti poll on a range of subjects related to 9 different BIM and GIS workflows. We've progressed quite a bit in the last few months, and we'll get into the details there, but essentially about half of the buildingSMART domains now have appointed an you're not hearing me?
Closer.
How about now? It's not on.
How about now? Oh, okay. Ooh.
Yeah,
Lights on.
The light's on.
All right. Well, thank you for putting up with my quiet voice. Now you can hear me. Thank you, Jugal. Half of the buildingSMART domains now have an individual appointed to collect feedback from that domain and contribute to a pool of user stories and use cases, which we're going to talk about today. The success of this session, of this next 90 minutes, will not be based on the 3 of us talking to you. The success will be by you participating through a Menti poll, perhaps a Miro board that we'll make available. Keep your phones handy, but don't check your emails, please. If you have a computer open, you can also use that to participate. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jag to keep the ball rolling, but we really look forward to your input, your feedback, your participation in this session to keep this momentum going related to BIM and GIS.
Thank you. Good morning still. So last day here. So I really appreciate the crowd. Maybe we'll do a quick round of introductions and I'll get into the presentation. Maybe Eric, you can go first and then I'll take it.
So Eric Poirier, I'm a professor at the École de Technologie Supérieure in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. I'm on the board of directors of buildingSMART Canada. And why I'm here at the table is because I have been involved with the ISO Joint Working Group 14 for TC59, SC13, and TC211 on developing BIM/GIS information exchange procedures, standards, and so forth. I don't know if Lai Wei is in the room, but I saw him here. He's also part of this working group, and there's also Sang-Ki Hong from Korea. So we're three leading this four-part, and I'll be able to talk about it a bit more. But have been involved and lucky to get involved with this working group. So,
thank you, Eric. Jag Malala with WSP. About 2.5 years ago, we started an effort which actually predates the 2.5 years I mentioned, probably by 10 years, with the buildingSMART community and the Open Geospatial Consortium to create momentum to advance the continuity of data modeling that happens at the BIM scale. You can say at the engineering scale with the geography scale that comes from GIS. And I think that is true for every single domain and every single act that we do in the infrastructure space or any other space, sustainability, energy modeling. Location is important. Details are important for various purposes. So there's already been an energy, but there was a renewed energy, let's say 2.5 years ago, to actually start doing this. And that's what Mark mentioned. I was given the task to put together a brilliant team. We have a team of these two gentlemen, but then we have probably 20 others that supported the development of the roadmap. And the roadmap is published, and I'll reference that now and just quickly recap what it's all about. But where we are today is essentially the talk, and the activity is meant to be us talking to you, but actually really also in all of these events, as Mark mentioned, we have been trying to progressively build interest, momentum, get feedback on what we're trying to do. So it's very transparent. So all of you have a voice. And after this workshop, I think we are going to continue to work with the OGC community in a very similar setting. We have a joint working group, I'll detail that, which will advance some real cases for the need to continue bringing data from BIM to GIS and GIS to BIM in a very standardized way. And some of it may be a little old hat to you because it's already happening. But what we don't have is at the international scale a way to do these things using standards and in a standardized fashion. We have tools talking to each other today, which is great, but we don't have the awareness in the BIM community about GIS, and the GIS community definitely about BIM. So we want to elevate that. We want to elevate, all of the tools and toolkits we have to actually make this happen at the international scale. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. So as Mark mentioned, I think this is going to be a workshop activity, so please be ready to help us carry this forward, because every single step that we're taking, every such summit is helping us get more ideas. Okay, so in terms of the outline for today, I'm going to cover very briefly the background, but and then the roadmap itself. And for those of you who have not seen it, you'll have an opportunity to download that, or at least have the QR code so that you can read it. It's a very short document. It's a very practical document. And then I think we'll spend most of our time in the what we call as post-roadmap publication. We have been working for the last 1 year or so with various domains here and also in OGC, and just kind of giving you, where we have been and where we are at in the journey, and what the next steps look like for us. And then, basically that's kind of the closing, of the event. So a little bit of background, just as a quick recap. Why do we need this? I don't think anybody in this room, because of your presence here, you already know what the imperatives and the drivers for change are. Certainly there is an increased demand for information continuity across scales. This morning I played the ISO 19650 game. It was very funny. I looked at the REBA, and those of you who are in my table at the back, I think there's one gentleman we both debated. I think we were on the same side. Is where do you start a project? Do you start with spatial information that you have at hand, or do you start with concept design? I think the world has changed. I think the new flows say, let's contextualize it, visualize it, look at where we are, and then maybe we have better concepts for design. It's not like the past. And the great thing is, both in the tools and the standards, if you map them to a map scale, the projections are the same. So you should be able to bring a building into a real world right now. So that, or a road, or everything that surrounds it. So we have better concepts, better flows. So it's kind of just a side note, very interesting conversation. So there is more information we have at hand, more awareness. There is heightened emphasis to preserve that information and that knowledge and the decisions that flow from that across the life cycle. And we frankly have better standards, tools, and technologies. And things are happening at that level. So just a quick roadmap. I'll probably won't bore you with all the animation on this, but I just wanted to mention concepts really started emerging in this space in early 2000s. So we're kind of very young. Look at literature. The BIM+GIS integration concepts were not that old, although the concepts individually have been around for a longer time, BIM and GIS separately. The focus on interoperability and standards in the mid-2000s, it started picking up. IFC and CityGML played key roles in trying to bridge that gap together. And CityGML, as you all know, is an OGC standard. The software industry obviously caught on to this, and they have been developing tools and API-based integrations, B2B relationships, for quite a while. Cloud, certainly, and cloud technology, being able to do work in a common data environment in the cloud and collaborate. And linked data principles, I just mentioned that only because, data modeling is different in tooling. Certain concepts from the technology sector and certain technology changes have also helped us link those things together. And then public agencies started pushing. And in Europe, you're very familiar with GeoBIM. So, we have things in motion. This is not something that is new. But what is new is really, we don't have an integrated set. First of all, we don't have education and awareness, as I said, as professionals on both sides. I think we still see each other as foreign actors. Generally, when we go to GIS, we don't know what BIM is. But it's all about information, right? It's all about geometry and attribution. We may put it in different places. Therefore, we don't have integrated requirements in projects. We don't have data modeling and linking. We need better data modeling and linking standards. The last part. And then we need to have a better understanding, of each other and the professions and better tools. I think so. That's kind of where the motivation for the roadmap was. And a goal of the roadmap, unlike previous efforts, was I think we wanted to create a set of actions that are user-driven. In other words, we don't want to start with standards and end with standards. It's an important part of it. But really, we want to start with where the problems are. What are the biggest problems to solve? What are the most common problems to solve? And then look at where we are in the industry in our ability to solve them. So it's really to leverage that momentum and build a user-driven roadmap that really relates to your story about why you need to integrate, okay? And enable that with better information management. That comes through standards, that comes with tools, that comes with requirements, that comes with awareness, that comes with education, training, all of that stuff. Okay, so I think that's kind of what that joint initiative was. We have tremendous support, and I think we are lucky now that to have not just buildingSMART and OGC look at this as we were doing this, thanks to Eric and the work that he's doing with ISO and ISO organization. They were also looking at the same thing. So we kind of joined hands. So I think we are really at an inflection point, I think, through these three large standardization organizations. But more importantly, they are standards development bodies, but the communities that they support are all of you, all of us who use this data. And I think having the reach through these bodies, not just in the standards, but to the users, is really where we wanted to take this. And that's the roadmap. And if you have not used it or downloaded it, I'm going to leave it up there. It was developed jointly by the two working group committees. There were a number of people, some very bright individuals who have been in this for 15, 20 years. So we really tapped into their knowledge. And it's not just us here. There were others who were involved in that. And I think even the titling of this roadmap is Enabling Information Continuity across BIM/GIS domains was deliberately debated and picked. It's really about information continuity across scale, right? So, so if you have not had a chance to pick it up, please look at it. it will have some information for you. So we're done with that roadmap. We introduced it. So where we are today is right after the roadmap was done, we wanted to form a steering committee, a new committee, not the same committee. Some members are the same, like myself and Mark and Eric. Yeah. So, but we have we formed a new committee, and the committee was deliberately chosen with membership drawn from existing BSI and OGC organizations, mainly because of the reach. And we reach straight to the all the domains within buildingSMART, and the chairs of those domains to give us a volunteer from their committee that's on the working group to help us drive the message of the roadmap forward. And majority of the domains responded with interest, and they actually put forth people that really are knowledgeable in this. So that's kind of our steering committee within buildingSMART. We have some of them in the room, and I will ask them to stand up, so prepare yourself. But they've been, we've been meeting voluntarily, although, at a cadence that allowed our schedules to meet for the last several months. We have a similar effort happening in OGC. They have 5 specific groups that we nominated. We asked for nominations of people from, and they have come forward. So here are some of the people on the buildingSMART domain side, that have come forward to support this effort. Infrastructure, as Mark said, as a representative and also a member of that working group, he is part of that. Suzanne from the rail domain, Van Ralte, she's not here in person, but hopefully she's online and she's able to hear us. We do have airports, and Morton is here, and Gerard, I think if you guys can stand up, if you can see yourself in the domain. Hi, Jang, I don't know if he's here. Yeah, so these gentlemen really are contributing their time. Thank you, both of you. Construction was represented in these discussions in maritime. Hai Jang and his colleagues joined us. So this is really great because we have cross-domain representations, which means the stories that we're going to bring forward will have multiple perspectives and angles, right? It's not abstract, it's the user stories. We are still looking for support from buildings. Georeferencing is crucial also. So please, there was interest, but please join us. There is still a lot of time to be on the working group, and it's going to be fun, I think, when we are done with this process. Similarly, on the OGC side, we have 5 groups, and you can see the names of those groups there. Okay, so it's really a joint exercise. We'll repeat what we are doing here, within those groups as well. So with that said, I'm going to pause here and see if, Eric, you can talk about ISO.
Yeah, I think one of the key components here is to go at it as a group, and this is a topic that is being looked at by multiple bodies, BSI and OGC, with the fact that they have a strong community that is very proactive and pragmatic. So developing, I think OGC has developed many standards. BSI, of course, is being very proactive. From the ISO level, Joint Working Group 14, which is a joint working group, as I said, between ISO TC 211, which is the GIS, and the TC 59 SC 13, which is the BIM group, was launched in 2019 with a first technical report, ISO TR 23262, on BIM and GIS, sort of looking at what is the current landscape around how things work. And, it's an interesting report for, I'm an architect, I work in the building domain. I did not really appreciate GIS, and I'm going towards that. To my appreciation in GIS is growing on a daily basis as I delve into that. It's a very mature topic. It's a very mature area. And I think essentially the report looks at these two domains and looks at the key differences and where are their alignments. So looking at, for instance, the fact that GIS does have a mature model-driven architecture, whereas the building domain doesn't. IFC is the closest we get to a data model for the industry, and things like that. From that technical report, a number of working packages were developed. And one of them is now actually about to be published. It's ISO. It's a technical report against 16214, which was led by Dan Rossiter. For those who know out of the UK, who's a terminology guru. And he reviewed basically geospatial and building information modeling terminology and looked at what are the terms that are similar, what are the terms that are different, what are the terms that are the same but are used differently. So it's basically a lexicon of all the terms, around concepts and features and objects and blah, blah, blah. So that's a very useful, it's about to be published element to just start aligning semantically, from an interoperability perspective, making sure that, two knowledge domains that don't necessarily speak the same language. And what we're seeing right now is another part of the work, which is a 5-part standard. We're now, we have 4 parts, and as I was saying, Lai Wei is leading parts 3 and 4 out of China. What you're seeing is basically our attempt to conceptualize how all these things are looking at, and what does a standard to support BIM+GIS information exchange look like. Of course, at the ISO level, things move a bit slower than at the BSI and the OGC level. So this is one of the key components here is this fact that we're looking at, and today we'll be trying to really figure out use cases and purposes and objectives and things that the industry needs. ISO is there to standardize, consensus base, look at setting foundational elements upon which we can build and do rapid development. So this 5-part standard is articulated around, first, the core principles and specifications to enact a BIM+GIS information exchange. Of course, georeferencing is one of them, but looking at the different perspectives that you'll adopt. I think from a building perspective, from a project perspective, construction management perspective, it's very related to processes. Whereas from a GIS perspective, we're looking at data, we're looking at location. So looking at teasing this out, trying to align things. The second part is around, which is led by Sang-Ki Hong from Korea, is around creating metadata profiles to support information exchanges. So when we're going to look at, for instance, information containers and looking at sharing resources between the building domain, the GIS domain, looking at making sure that things that are being sent, things that are being packaged are recognized in the context. And this is where these use cases are good, is saying, okay, well, we have a purpose, we have specific requirements. When we actually bundle these together, what are the metadata requirements? That metadata is much more developed in the GIS domain than in the building domain. If you look at, what we use metadata for, it's around, information containers, around, status codes and classifications and so forth. Whereas in the GIS domain, I'm learning that metadata is basically the key. Then we have two parts around looking at, again, linking abstract concepts. So there are concepts that exist in both domains, and trying to bridge that all around semantic mapping and geometric representation. So, a curve is a curve is a curve. What does it look like in CityGML? What does it look like in the GIS domain? What does it look like in IFC and in the BIM domain? And of course, you have the meta level application domains, and I'm learning all of this stuff. Part 5 is around quality control. It's not yet launched. Of course, it'll be developed based on the 4 parts that are here. So what you're seeing is essentially looking at enabling this information exchange, seamless information exchange, providing the resources to support it, but always to serve the work that's being done around purposes, objectives, and requirements. So that's it.
And so that was actually a blessing, because one of the biggest pitfalls in previous attempts at doing this has been synonyms, concept mapping, and semantic linkages. And I think anybody who is in this world understands that these are hard to accomplish. The fact that at the ISO level, we are looking at some of these things really brings immediate maybe solutions to us, to our aspirations on what we want to solve as an industry. I think then with all the things that are happening, then we can focus on the problems we want to solve. And so that'll become the biggest challenges. Which ones do we want to tackle first? And that's pretty much where we are today. So just moving on, in terms of the roadmap, so I think the next steps, we did all of that. We have aligned with the industry. So what does the roadmap say? We're simply following it. Okay, so the roadmap says the first step was to solicit user stories. So what are the problems that are on your mind that you would like to solve? And we specifically chose the word story because a story is is your lived experience of what you're trying to solve. A use case is a very technical and totally misunderstood word. So I would say user stories is where we start. So story is like, I am somebody, whether I'm designer, planner, X, Y, and Z, and I want to do something that requires data from my BIM tool or from my standard IFC file to link with something, in my GIS environment. So that's kind of what we asked for. So when I mentioned all those domains that we were talking about, we went to each one of them and said, can you give us, based on your experience, what those stories look like? We'd like that exercise was completed, by the domains that I had a check mark against, and we got data from them. I think that is the, I would say, distilled experience of some of the experts that we have from the domains that gave us the stories. Certainly, that's not the end all and be all. We can do a bigger effort to canvas stories from the wider community, and I'm sure we missed several. But in having done this in so many years now, 2 years, that was not our only input. I mean, we did have, other input coming in terms of the data collection. And so I'll say that, we collected stories from the experts, we collected stories from polling in webinars and previous meetings that we have held of similar type. And then we started actually, maybe I should go one step back, looking at how do you take all of these stories now and then do some analysis on it. So we took those stories and we semantically grouped the stories that looked alike. So regardless of whether you're a building person or whether you are infrastructure person or an energy person, you have similar meanings in what you're trying to do. Like you're trying to locate something that is in the built world into the real world. And that is a semantic driven process. So we try to semantically group it in our working groups and then prioritize based on what stories surface to be the most popular based on what we know to date. And we'll present some of those findings. Okay. So the story, and this is a little bit boring, so I'll skip over really quickly. This is something, when you do crunching of input coming from diverse sources and trying to look at meanings that are similar, you do clustering, that's called cluster analysis. And so we just did our normal analytical process. We used, luckily the stories were, I think I had about 80 stories collected from various domains. And then we had poll results from about another 100 of them. So it was not a very intensive list, but still it was enough to give us a representation. But again, some of them are expert opinions. So they already baked in things from other experiences of the people that were providing us inputs. So we did that, of course, in the age of AI, we also have to use tools. So we also did that. We compared, did the smell test on those things. And so what we ended up with was essentially the most popular story groups. They were stories, generally, if you parse them, based on things that people were telling us were, how to organize construction logistics better and have better project control measures using BIM and GIS data. How to do some environmental analysis, geological analysis for compliance, regulatory compliance or any compliance of that sort. There were some stories tied to focus on logistics in construction planning or infrastructure planning and asset management. So they kind of clustered around this. Again, we go to a broader group, we may find other stories as well. So the point was that we had the stories, we aggregated them, and we now surface them into higher order abstractions. We got too many user stories, but now we are now talking about use cases. Okay, so we kind of went from there to use cases. And then and that's where we are right now. We are at the use case level, and then we want to then pick the ones that are most popular. You will help us today define what the next steps in the roadmap activities are and help us carry out those activities. So what are those use cases? So we came up with 10 things, okay? And I'll spend a minute or two just going through this. The first one, well, more than a minute or two. I have 10, so a minute or two on each, I meant. So infrastructure planning and alignment. Think of this as large-scale corridors or campuses or subdivision level planning, greenfield airports, new rail lines, even brownfield, large scale, okay? Integrating existing as-built information for better context and early detection of constraints. That's the first one. The second one, I think, is construction logistics and operational control. Think of this as the scope could be digital as-built capture for real-time comparisons, or traffic management if you're in transportation, which is where I'm from, or if you're in campuses, multi-site oversight, multi-site projects and oversight of those multi-site projects, okay? So you can think of, if you're in airports, it's multi-phase airport terminal expansions, integrated scheduling and logistics, baggage handling, happening at different parts of the airports and things of that sort. Third one is easier for us to understand, the environmental impact analysis. I think that's what it is. And it is, again, brownfield redevelopment, even greenfield, urban planning, essentially, for sustainability, water management, energy studies, using as-built data to assess post-construction impacts for environmental impact, things of that nature. The fourth one is project simulation and optimization. Here, looking at scenario modeling, for large-scale projects for different purposes, master plans, campus expansions of that nature. Fifth one, I think, is a popular one, which is asset lifecycle management, very broad field. Think of handover and digital as-built models used in the operations and management phase. The next slide we have and there, real-time. So very favorite topic for everyone, real-time project monitoring and digital twin integration. We have digital twin international committees. We have digital twin working groups everywhere, but we had to bring it in here because most people think of digital twin as BIM and GIS data coming together, along with IoT information. Okay, so it's really about near real-time insights. Now that's how we parse it, right? Overlaid with built and natural environment data. The next one there is facility and operational management. Now we have an operations use case. It goes beyond a single building and single building environment for real-time monitoring to large campuses or multi-site contexts, leveraging IoT data for operational purposes, temperature in this room, whatever the case is. The next one was hazard scenario assessment and management, for disaster prevention, flood risk, urban level risk assessment for flood, seismic, fire, things of that nature. Design analysis and visualization. This is a very popular one, and mostly used in large-scale design verification, where you're ensuring the detailed building or infrastructure geometry can be visualized for environmental or demographic analysis. It can also be used in compliance and permitting purposes. The check project. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. I think that's part of there is a permitting project that's happening, and there's also a geotechnical project that's happening both in the BIM+GIS side at the international scale. The last one is strategic analytical decision making, using as-built information to do long-term planning, popularly known as asset management. Again, not my favorite term. It is actually strategic asset management. You're looking at planning phase. You're really not taking care of assets as if you're maintaining them. You're really planning for future, right? So anyway, we got 10 themes. You can criticize us if there's something missing from your perspective, but generally speaking, there is a relationship between these 10 themes and any story that you can bring to the table. Now, the words may not be precise, and we can wordsmith those, but that's where we ended up. We had some debates on this, and we'll continue to have debates. These 10 are not the final. We're going to do the same exercise on the OGC side. They may come up with completely different or maybe similar, hopefully similar, and then we're going to compare from the OGC side, our side, and come up with a final list. But with the 10 we did a little bit of prioritization using several criteria. We had a desirability scale and a feasibility scale. On the desirability is like, how urgently do you think this solution will help your case that you're trying to do? What benefits there exist to it? Things of that nature. That's on the desirability scale. On the feasibility scale, do we have tooling to support it? Yes, we have a desire, but what is the effort needed to make this happen? Exist in existing standards in an open way. Again, we're not talking about commercial tools talking to each other. We're talking about an open standards-based approach. So the final 5 from that, which is the subject of a workshop now, is these 5. I'm going to leave the examples on the slide as we move through. But what we want to do with these 5, maybe I go back one step, is now do a workshop portion where, what we are trying to do with this is, if you look at the titles and you look at, what I presented before as our definitions for these 5, how do you, if from your perspective, if you agree, hopefully you agree with the 5, how do you, what do you see are the main purposes and needs from your perspective? Hoping we have a very diverse set of audience. Each of you may have your own purpose. When you see these 5 up there, you may say, well, from my perspective, design analysis and visualization is X, Y, and Z. We want to use some sort of workshop, which Eric and Mark will lead you through, to capture your perspectives on the core purpose for each of these 5. The idea behind that is, once we have a purpose and need defined, everything else flows from there, right? That's what ISO 19650 tells us, right? We are good people here, open standards, open BIM. So we want to drive the next phases of these use cases. You can think of these use cases as a backlog. We'll try to solve these 1 or 2 or 3 at a time at an international scale, and which I'll using support from multiple chapters of buildingSMART and OGC, or maybe multiple clients as well. So that's kind of getting ahead of myself, but this is where we want to spend some time. So I don't know, Eric, you want to kind of tee this off, and Mark, you can take over.
So Mark, you'll be running through the crowd and getting them riled up. So essentially, hopefully you have a phone or a computer, and you can jump into the Miro board or to the Menti. I'm going to launch the Menti. So the first question is around in the Menti. It's to actually, which domain do you belong to? Yeah.
Does everyone? Yeah, you need the QR code still.
Yeah, please. Yeah, we'll leave those up for a little bit. So please, identify the domain you belong to. And what we'll do is then, and if you have a computer, I also have a tiny URL that I'll be able to share. So we'll be spending. So it's 11:40. We're going to break at 12. We want a 10-minute break. So we have 10 minutes per use case. So that's plenty of time to discuss and participate. We can actually even write things down. We have some good old pen and paper, and we'll be able to essentially, as Jag was saying, what are the purposes and the objectives that you would like to see within the category of use case that was identified? So we're seeing there's 25. I'm sharing one screen. I can, how can I share? I'll stop screen. Can I share? I'll share my entire screen, videos. Entire screen, yep. Here. All right, now.
Let's see if everybody's on there, on the Menti.
Yep.
Everybody who wants to be on it.
So yeah, you can share my screen.
Not on the Menti, I think. Are you having trouble getting on? She's having trouble getting on Menti.
Yeah, I was, can you share my computer, my screen, and
I'd suggest that they just go to Menti.
Yeah, we'll
So you went over here and shared your screen?
Yeah. Yeah, there. If you can go back, Laura, to.
So it looks like 38 people have signed on to the Menti, and I counted about 75 people in the room. So,
All right, now you can
who
go
doesn't
to
have a phone.
You can go to the code. Yeah, menti.com, and then the code is there. So, all right, we'll get it. bear with us. This is an interactive session, and we're flying by the seat of our pants. It's the way to do things.
So we have more people from building, and then infrastructure, and then it breaks down. Yeah, on? Yeah, there we go.
It's good because we were missing people from.
No one from product, no one from electrical, no one from energy. That group just started. 44 people, 45.
Who is other?
Who's other? Raise your hand if you, other. What does other mean?
It's important.
First of all, I don't belong to a domain of BuildingSMART organization because I'm a member of steering committee of EU BIM+GIS group, and now established our new Greek chapter in building organization. And other means that I'm not at these domains, and my job is a policymaker in construction sector. So I could choose one of these sectors separately. But I'm interested in BIM and GIS.
Try to do.
Who else?
Yeah, anyone else other? Declare those other? Just curious what that might mean.
I don't have access.
Hi, so I'm from the Romanian chapter. We have a research domain. I'm from that domain, but I work as in the public administration back in Romania at the county level.
Any other?
So I'm not a member of a particular domain. I'm working cross-domain. I'm sitting in the strategic group for water utilities, hopefully a future domain. So that means the other.
Domain yet to be named. Okay. So it looks like we got a few people up on the Miro board.
It's good. We have people that are good.
You want to talk through it, Eric? Maybe
Yeah, sure. So what we're going to do, and for people with the phone, so now I think we're good. We're stable with the domain. 49 still people coming in. I'll go to the next slide. And so let's start with the first use case around design analysis and visualization. We have an example here around, I want to use integrated BIM+GIS models to compare highway design alternatives, confirm regulatory compliance, improve stakeholder communication across corridor alignments, intersections, and traffic scenarios. So that's actually 3 purposes in one. So if you're on your phone and you prefer to use this way, please contribute here. If you want to go through Miro, it's the same element here. So you can go to the tinyurl.com YHH49F3W, join the Miro board, and you can either take a sticky directly from the stack and then just right here. In the Miro board, we're expanding. So again, the idea here is to identify the purposes, and then from there identify the requirements, the process that's behind it, the exchanges. That's really highlighting the information exchanges between the 2 domains to be able to start producing and for moving forward this whole standardization effort. If ever you feel really up to it, if you have specific use cases or case studies, if you're aware of case studies, if you want to propose an actual real life use case or case study to document this, that's even better.
And I would say if you're going to drop a case study square there and describe it somehow, please put your name, your company name, some way that we can contact you afterwards to dive in a little bit deeper on those. Do you want to maybe zoom in on some of those objectives and just see what's starting to pop up?
As mentees, are we? So we're multimodal. So there we go.
Okay.
Okay.
So we got some.
Quickly identify spatial and environmental boundaries and limits for my project. Anyone want to say who typed that? I'm going to ask you more questions. Maybe I shouldn't have let you know that. Quickly identify spatial and environmental boundaries and limits for my project. A very visual situation. Eric, did you type that one?
I did not.
Yes. Anonymous?
It's somebody maybe online.
Oh, could be, right.
Yeah.
Very well, actually. Probably if they're online, they're in front of their computer.
And so we'll spend another 3 or 4 minutes here. So if anybody wants to further this, maybe there's others that we want to go ahead. Jack.
But I think this is one of the biggest needs, actually. I think whoever typed it in, I think it is you can see how that seems like a very simple statement, but you can see the complexity of moving information. What information from a BIM model goes into a geography model to answer that question. And a building has many envelopes. And I think that's the check projects that's trying to solve it, whether it's for permitting or regulatory compliance. I mean, this does make a difference. And the devil is in the detail. The purpose seems simple enough, but I think as we get into the discussions, that's what you're driving at, is the requirements, and the data modeling is going to be very specific. So it's very, very good input there.
Yeah, as we got together yesterday online and in person, was it just yesterday in person? Wow.
Day before.
Day before. It was the day before, wasn't it? Yeah, okay. We came to agreement, discussion that this idea of visualization is such a foundational capability related to the intersection of BIM and GIS. And then earlier on the walk over here, I was having a conversation about GIS and its somewhat undersold and undervalued purpose as a collaboration, communication tool. Certainly GIS is brilliant at analysis in ways that BIM is not, but as a visualization, a communication, a storytelling capability, getting information out of the traditional BIM tools that might be extremely expensive or extremely difficult into a map. We're almost born with the ability to understand and read a map, whereas a 3D model or a stack of 2D drawings, it takes some expertise. So I'm not surprised to see communicate designs to a wider public being a purpose objective.
Maybe a last final minute on this, and then we'll move to the next. There's a couple of good ones here, and thanks for putting your name. I think that's great. We'll be able to track people down.
And we're also probably going to find as we go through these, like that hazard mapping just popped up, it may be covered in one of the other four primary uses. There's certainly not a hard line between most of these use cases that we've come up with. But as Jag and Eric both have pointed out, the intent here is to come up with those foundational cross-domain types of stories and use cases and potentially case studies that we can dive into, come to understand the requirements, come to understand the audience, and potentially identify companies who want to work on pilot projects to prove these workflows are possible and valuable.
I like the connect marine traffic flows to my port design. That's
It's topology.
all right. Shall we move on? Next one. All right, real-time project monitoring and digital twin integration. So that's the again here we're seeing this being populated both in the Miro board and in the Mentimeter. So I don't know if Jag, you want to maybe quickly recall what real-time project monitoring and digital twin integration is, and
Yes. That particular one, according to the stories and what came out of the stories, the scope was to deliver near real-time insights using IoT and sensor inputs that integrate BIM geometry, highly specific BIM geometry, with GIS location data for a holistic digital twin use case realization. For example, if you're trying to study, again, transportation example, if you're trying to study the impact of air quality, related to density of cars on the roads, for example. And that would be a great example because we have a very good definition of the roadway that comes from a BIM model. We'd have real-time monitoring of the cars, and we have sensors sensing air quality. Similarly, you could do a citywide monitoring things like that. It's just one example, but yeah. So it's really to tie sensor inputs in near real time with geometry and location.
So I'm surprised there's 0 responses. Is the page live?
Should be like.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone want to give a thumbs up just to make sure that Menti's working? Oh, there we go. Great. This is a really interesting topic to me. My history is many years in the world of CAD and BIM, and about 5 years at Esri immersed in GIS. And most of those 5 years have been related to digital twins, because as Jag pointed out, the concepts of BIM and the details that it provides and the representation of a plan or existing conditions at a more granular level, combined with GIS, which is typically capable of bringing in sensor information, imagery information, IoT data, by many definitions, that's a digital twin. There's been a couple of papers, one produced by the US National Institute of Building Sciences, one very recently produced by the Digital Twin Consortium on the intersection of BIM and GIS, or the importance of location for digital twins. So I think this is one that over the next year or two, we're going to continue to see that BIM and GIS come together to deliver the promise of digital twins that will, I think, continue to be a buzz in the industry for some time. Power consumption per building aggregated over a whole distribution system. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, a lot of the structural health monitoring on bridges, roads, tunnels, I think will be a key use case here.
Anyone in the room typed in anything yet, either on the mural board or on the Menti? You want to maybe elaborate on what you typed in?
Yeah, I guess from a construction perspective, we use GIS a lot, both for project monitoring, safety, permits to excavate, and then being able to overlay the BIM data as well. So progress monitoring is probably an important one. We want to bring all the data together. We do construction lot management, where we package up how we're going to build things, and then we have to report back on that. And the best way to do that is spatially. To bring in the BIM data, as long as the spatial data, that's bringing it all together in one place in more of a visual interface is a big advantage, rather than with the old-fashioned document management systems. GIS and BIM both play a big part. Bringing them together is the important bit.
Who are you with?
buildingSMART Australasia, but my full-time role is as part of a tier 1 construction company, CIMIC.
I've seen some great things you guys have done on BIM and GIS.
Yeah, I think that's construction monitoring, and also actually construction means and methods is another one for safety for the contractors, on the HSEQ side of health, safety, environmental quality monitoring as well. So it's a great point.
Anyone else? Type out anything they might want to talk about and describe?
Stuff is coming into the Menti a bit more, maybe another 2 minutes.
There's a lag.
There's a bit of a lag, yeah.
Gerard?
Gerard?
Hi, I'm Gerard from the airport domain. We are at NACO, we're designing airports, so we are working together with both civil, architectural, master planning, and we like to combine it with the dynamic information, the IoT. So there, I think GIS, and especially the combination with GIS and BIM, will be vital for us. So I'm very interested to see how we can do that.
Yeah, the examples I've seen around the globe from airport operators are some of the best examples of BIM and GIS and IoT sensors coming together, again, delivering on that digital twin concept, which is great to see, because I know several airports years ago, the BIM group was one group, the GIS was another. It was inside versus outside, and just a hard line between the two, and it's great to see better examples.
All right.
One comment?
One more?
Yeah, not sure. Sorry?
Can you just introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, sure. René Zijlstra from Royal Koning DHV. I think there's a large need also for real-time project monitoring during design and construction development. So I'm not very sure if there's always a connection with the digital twin integration. But
yeah, that's just a general comment. The need is supported. Yeah.
Did you add that to your? Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Somehow it isn't apparent.
Well, it might be off the page yet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move on. All right, the next one, environmental impact analysis. So we had a couple of people respond to that one earlier. You can re-enter them here. We have people that are preceding us, which is fantastic. Wildfire, if that's certainly from a Canadian perspective or North American perspective, actually, the wildfires were a big thing, and a lot of GIS was used. But now, if we can have actual information models for the built assets and understand and simulate and analyze the impact, I think for the insurance companies, it's something that's going to become very useful and very, unfortunately, very prevalent. Flood modeling.
We just saw in the U.S. the horrible fires in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, GIS was critical in the flight planning to bring the planes in and coordinate them and drop water in the proper location. But not wanting to be a critic, you got to think that if there might have been some connection between the BIM and the GIS, perhaps the water distribution would have been better and more reliable, and perhaps could have mitigated some of the damage.
Mm-hmm.
A BIM GIS hazard mitigation or response could have been much better.
It won't stop wildfires, but it'll
put them out.
It'll help,
yeah.
help put them out maybe more effectively. It's a lot of hazards. And when you look at that, I think we saw some earthquake modeling earlier. I would probably put them, maybe not here. I think actually this is environmental, so flooding, fires, hurricanes. Wind, high wind. I think one thing in Canada is we're looking at revisiting the building code, seismic code. There's a lot of work on performance-based codes, trying to analyze, the impact of a code change in a specific region on how it responds to floods and these and resilience is also a huge element, huge topic. So shout out to my NRC colleagues here, that hopefully for BIM+GIS use there.
Has anyone provided any cards on environmental here? Anyone in the room chimed in on this one? Maybe.
Hi, I'm Peter Thompson from University of Canterbury. We're doing wildfire and flood modeling. Looking at the incursion of the fire and the flood into the urban landscape, so the interface with the buildings. So we're trying to gather BIM data to inform that accurate modeling process now because we need to model the fire as it approaches the buildings, but then also building to building fire spread as well, developing algorithms for that. So, and then trying to work out mitigation strategies to fight the fire, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine in a BIM file, if you know the materials of the infrastructure of the building that you have, which is going to come from BIM, in the context of a GIS environment, which is going to give you all that location information, the analytics, the spatial analytics, and then flooding or other hazards that might impact that. That's a great BIM GIS workflow that neither of them individually could solve, but together, it's great.
We have one thing was air quality in California. That was a huge issue in Canada too. Simulating and again, what's being burned, what's being part of the as materials, and having that probably is, if we want to extrapolate, qualify the air impact to air quality.
Go back to the Menti for a second.
Yeah, for sure.
One on the far right caught my eye. Monitoring emissions during operation and usage, and react accordingly automatically with AI to regulate use. Yeah, that's great. I mean, again.
That's a real That's a real digital twin use case, because you have a two-way interaction. Actually, when you monitor and then you take action, from a computer back to real life.
Automation.
But it is also a great use case for the environmental impact analysis.
And it's a great example where, again, BIM provides some of the information, GIS others, the BIM platform for its capabilities, the GIS platform for others.
It
together.
is very important, Mark. I think this one, on a geography scale, that really shows the impacts, because I remember the Great Canadian wildfires of last year, which impacted a lot of lower northeast part and the southern part of the United States, where we had very, very low air quality levels because of the fires happening in the north. And you can think about the geography scale here, and homes, and we have advisories not to actually walk or jog, do your daily activities for people living in the communities. So just bringing information from that scale to where the buildings are and what the occupancies are, and actually putting alerts out through your phones, I mean, that's a powerful use case.
Or
right?
as
I mean,
an
it's real
owner,
life.
knowing that these air quality conditions at a geographic scale are going to affect some of your portfolio, but not other parts of it. Yeah. Explosive ordnance testing and coordination models. That's cool.
Oh, yeah.
Great input.
All right.
Yes.
Also, if we can, Liana Anagnostakis from Technical Chamber of Greece, if we could combine also earthquakes and regions where we have volcanoes, because there the GIS is significant to notice all the geological data. And with earthquakes, these data are changed, so we have to follow all these changes. In Greece, we have a problem in this area at the island of Santorini. Maybe a lot of you know this island. We have a volcano here and an earthquake, and we have a lot of we have to follow and notice all the data in order to implement a strategic plan for the protection of the island. So GIS and BIM will be a great input.
I saw a great example at a conference a year or two ago. It wasn't necessarily related to that, but you triggered something, made me remember a road planning scenario being developed by civil engineers that were about to direct the roadway through a green space. And through GIS, they realized that it was a path of migration of an endangered species. And had they proceeded on their construction plan with the routing that they would have taken, they would have received millions of dollars in fines. And they were able to redirect the pathway of the roads to avoid that particular area. And again, a combination of the BIM civil engineering tasks that designed the roadway and the environmental conditions that were exposed through GIS literally saved millions of dollars on just this one corridor pathway.
I think one of the key ones here is around materials, and that's really the interplay between, because traceability, if we look at FSC wood, that there's a system in place where you certify the forest, you certify the production, you certify the way that's transported, and you certify it when it's across this whole life cycle. So in the wood domain, it's well done. I think we're going to see that with other types of materials. So this notion of mapping the local materials, what's being done where, I mean, that, of course, in carbon footprint, in LCA, these are all important things. We're looking at, from our perspective, circularity assessment and looking at urban mining. So what are the materials present in a city that could be then reused? So really towards a circular economy. I think that's a key one of GIS and BIM integration, where if you can characterize the building types, the typologies, if you can say, Montreal, for instance, is bylaws impose bricks, and of course bricks are very easy to reuse, and so if we have a demolition here, we have a project here, we have this amount of brick, we can then use it, take it, and then ship it. These are, I think, from a environmental perspective, if we position it that way, that's something that can be useful. Move on.
This is just a quick question, and again, I am learning a lot. there's a ton of information sitting in GIS, fault lines, all kinds of geology, all kinds of things that sound like it could address Santorini or other questions. Is that really a knowledge gap between the BIM world and the GIS world still? I just kind of took for granted that people are consuming that, but
Yeah.
I don't know the BIM side.
So I think where it is, I think definitely a knowledge gap, but people are aware and they're doing their spatial analysis, to your point, right now where they can. What is missing, I think, is the real impact driving, so the real impact analysis. So for example, if you have a building of a certain type, that comes in the knowledge of what's in the building, what code it was built under, what the engineering criteria are, what bearings a bridge has, for example. That's a very BIM-oriented information. So I think I remember a use case from Japan where they had an earthquake, and they had to quickly inventory certain types of bridges with a certain bearing type. That is not possible with just spatial analysis using GIS and knowing where the bridges are. What it needs is what bearing type existed in those bridges, because they need to go out quickly and repair or stop traffic on them. So we are really trying to get to that next level of modeling, standardizing that modeling to realize a certain use case. And what we're trying to, so I think this is where the issue is. Similarly, we talked about zoning, from environmental impact, whether it is air quality or an earthquake, what zones, what portfolio of my property is vulnerable to this, that's specific to the BIM domain. And it's not connected because it may not have been modeled correctly to begin with. So raising awareness, now we have a lot of use cases and a lot of purposes here. So trying to get to a common denominator where we can articulate these and everybody can see that their use case or their scenario is realized is a challenge here. But yes, so I hope that makes it a little clear. I think it's both an awareness issue and using existing information, but the lack of information as well, so.
And maybe to touch on your question, I'm going to, not to dance around this too much, I'm going to put on and take off my Esri hat here. Esri has invested in developing integrations with a handful of partners. Not everyone, and we tend to put most of our investment in one particular partnership. We can bring CAD, BIM, GIS together really well with one or two vendors, but there's a whole lot more. So the purpose of this initiative is to make it easier for companies like Esri to be integrated with those other solutions without doing one-off integrations with everyone. So I could show you some amazing examples where we've brought Autodesk and Esri tech together. But what if you're using Graphisoft or Allplan? And what about the other GIS platforms? So yeah, there's a gap in general, but there have been some great one-to-one connections that have been done.
There is awareness gap and there is also data gaps. I mean, another example I think is safety recalls on guide rails. You remember in the United States, we had a big problem with end treatments on certain guide rails where, as your car crashes into the guide rail, actually the guide rail component was impaling the driver rather than protecting them. So they wanted to find where these end treatments were. Now, where does that reside, that detail on what the end treatment is? It's usually in a BIM model, right? I think it doesn't exist in GIS, for example. Now, if you never articulated a need to do things like this, we would never be able to model it correctly and actually even have to, linking is another huge step. So I think we're trying to standardize. We can't solve the world's problems, but I think we should solve enough, to be able to say that awareness rises and therefore needs rise and therefore tooling is available. I think that's kind of where it is.
On to the next one.
Moving on to, we have two left: facility operations and maintenance, and there's some in the Miro. So thanks for.
Jag, do you maybe want to elaborate on what that particular?
Yes, this is on the facility and operations management. I think the specific idea here was essentially what we do with the operations management of facilities using as-built data. So going beyond managing a single building to a campus wide, for example, multi site or large campuses, leveraging as-built data that comes for every building for day-to-day operations of that building, but also of the portfolio. So essentially, because it's geography, it's not a single building. If it's a single building, we have a digital twin and a BIM model that can take care of it. But if you're not thinking of campus-wide installations or many, many miles of infrastructure, now
I'm going to push back against that. If you have a single building and you have a great BIM model,
right,
and it includes all the attributes you need to manage that, there's still plenty of places where having spatial analytics,
even within the building,
within one building,
right,
finding, asset
right,
finding, optimizing your crew to go out and work on things, even just with a single small campus.
Right. The only counter I give to that is today's BIM models can do spatial analytics and topology also within the existing IFC
The larger
schema.
a project is, the more
Yes.
value you're going to get.
Campus-wide would be the real benefit. I think that's the point.
Yeah, well, that notion of route planning is, I mean, we at the university, it's a small campus, but the amount of time, we've actually quantified the amount of time that people waste, a worker wastes, because they're going to the site, they're missing something, they're coming back to the workshop, and it's hours in a week.
Or historically, the GIS shows a single asset as one object without drilling down to the attributes of the chiller, the blower, the pump. Whereas if it's all combined in one solution, you're going out there with the right tools, with the right monitoring equipment. Any owner operators in the room?
There we go.
Any comments, thoughts on BIM and GIS? I think you guys are doing some things with BIM and GIS, aren't you?
Yeah, I think well, you can do any analysis on the assets without GIS or without BIM. You can do it by inserting data and analyzing the data. But the important thing I see is in visualizing the context, because we need the visualization, and this is something crucial. We can examine every single object, every single building, and we can also do a GIS analysis. But bringing those two data sources together can help us find patterns. And I think the pattern detection is something very crucial for the management of a huge asset, as we have to do when it comes to airports.
So to Jag's example, I'm with the Kentucky DOT, and we chased the type 1N treatment all over, trying to find where those were. Right now, we're doing an AI proof of concept to try to find a different guardrail challenge across the state of Kentucky. So the challenge with BIM is it's usually project-centric, and you build the project, and then those assets live for another 100 years. And the next project that touches those assets is going to be a different geographic footprint, and it's going to integrate some things that exist in the original project and other things that exist in totally different project. And so as a data owner or as an owner, we need to be able to integrate all of that information into multiple asset management systems, but be able to touch, query, ask, and identify the changes that we need to make. So.
All right, and cognizant of time, we'll do the last one, which is around strategic and analytical decision-making, and we added here for capital planning. So again, it's in that decision-making, early stage decision-making, where, as I said, our university is growing, where we've planned 3 new buildings for the campus. And one thing is always, we're missing space. We always miss space, even though you walk around campus and half of the spaces are empty. And you're like, okay, well, why is this? So space optimization, but campus-wide space planning. So understanding where are which classrooms are occupied at what time, and then saying, do you really need? And then lab spaces and so forth. So we need a campus-wide view on, and the spatial data, of course, the spaces are can be modeled and so forth.
You're going to assign a purpose or the assets that are within a space.
Yep.
Within BIM.
Yep.
Then you want to put that into a.
So the objective there was space optimization. For in a linear infrastructure, it's portfolio management. We have miles and miles of rail or road or waterways. How do we optimize what we need to do first? You can also bring in resilience planning as part of why BIM and GIS data. Where are my roads? Where is high level, high sea level rise? Whatever the resilience measures are. And that's not an easy solution, because if you look at the level of detail, it does matter, because the portfolio, the type of roadway, type of facility, type of building has a cost to it. If it's in an urban setting versus a rural setting, similarly roadway infrastructure. So it is not a GIS line and a sea level rise. It is really what is the cost associated with that. And that's very detailed analysis. And what is the value of that cost and strategic value. So it's really about capital resilience plan, capital planning. It could be resilience studies, things of that nature, and anything that's strategic. So.
Things are still coming in. Good to see you. Just moved the Menti. I think people
How are we doing for time?
We are going to wrap up in 10 minutes, so we need to
Okay.
go to the next steps then.
Yeah, so right now we'll leave the Miro board open. We'll leave the Menti open on the last slide, so people can participate. I don't know if there's any. If you want to do a last round around the room for capital planning, and then we can
on capital planning and owner operators. Are those involved in capital planning?
I think that we could use the digital building permit based on BIM and GIS for better urban planning. So I think it's the key use case, digital building permit.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Did we have permitting somewhere in the?
There was permitting in the initial, in one of the, in the 10, but we didn't bring it down here. But it could be a part of the planning. Infrastructure planning is part of permitting. So there is already in the 5.
Well, I think some of the examples we saw on the first day in the plenary from the local Singapore organization.
Right. Even our first use case here had permitting in it. So I think, and that is the big project that's happening right now in Europe. You probably know the Czech project. It's exactly that, digital permitting. So.
Finland and Tallinn from Estonia have already
been part of that.
Yeah,
yes.
part of it.
Yes. Okay, so I think maybe we move on. Thank you for all that input. I think the first thing I will say is, if you like this discussion, as we prioritize and backlog what needs to be solved, please get in touch with your representatives in your domains, number one. Whichever room you're interested in, whichever domain, not room, I guess it's domain now. Whichever domain you are interested in, please get in touch with your representatives. Be a part of an active community that will bring your valuable perspectives, because the devil is obviously in the detail, is in the next step. So why did we collect the purposes from you? We have done this before. Every time we see something new, right? Purpose and need is the first step in creating requirements. And those requirements, the broader we make them, the more neutral we make them to the specific infrastructure area that you're, or domain that you, of knowledge that you represent, the better we are in taking the next steps. And so the next steps really, I know this font is a little small here, but really is to continue this dialogue with OGC and take a look at our big 5 after we're done with the refinement of all the work that you've given us, all the inputs that you've given us, and refinement of these 5. We'll do the same thing with OGC. And then we will publish the final 5 as a backlog of prioritized use cases that we will want to solve. The next step from there, as per the roadmap, we're going to follow the roadmap after this, is really to improve, number one, awareness. this is not something that we have not tackled before, even in an open standards way. The idea is not that this is something very new. The idea is that it is in motion work. We want to take the ones that have biggest momentum, that is where work is already being done, and spread the awareness. I think to Will's point, it's a matter of awareness. It's the first step is collecting those use cases, stories from you, actual solutions that you have faced, and publishing the themes of stories, whether it's a building story or a infrastructure story that line up with the use case. So we want your experience, there to represent that. Obviously, we'll probably make those use cases available, the stories, the actual case studies available against the use cases through some OGC or buildingSMART medium. We'll publish them, increase the awareness. That's the first step. Then I think the work really begins in trying to developing the standardized toolkits. It's not enough to put the stories out. It is also important that we create awareness among the standards making bodies to say, look, this is the type of information we want you to model to support the BIM-GIS integration. So it's not a BIM effort, it's not a GIS effort, it's a joint effort. So we'll probably use the use case management tool to describe the use cases broadly. We'll probably put the requirements that are aligned to these use cases that support multi-domain analysis, and then work with parallelly with the standards bodies as well as the software and technology providers to realize the use cases. One key differentiator in the roadmap is really that we're not going to wait for standards to be developed to be able to do this analysis. I think we need to get acceptance before standardizing. I think that's where this roadmap is going to be very practical. So we're going to start solving the problems in the best way we can, in the hope that the standards will catch up to it, because in many cases, it is not going to be simple. So standards will take some time. With IFC 5, there's big promise. I was very encouraged by what I heard yesterday. OGC is in the same boat. They have also developed terrific standards that allow the data linkages to happen. So really developing the toolkits against every use case that solves a problem generically is the ultimate goal of this journey. As a working group, what we'll be doing is for every use case, we'll be meeting in person to do the requirements analysis, the process steps, and process modeling. We'll make the process models available as soon as we can. It will be jointly done with OGC, and the models themselves will have obviously the task flows, the data flows, and the references to open standards. And we take those and then further develop them. So that's kind of our roadmap. We want to come up with the top 2 or 3 that we can solve in the next 1 year and start showing progress to the industry. So the call to action is really, and then of course, and after that, engage with the vendor community as we always do, to make sure that their tools can support these standards, and then get agencies that commission these works to put this into legal frameworks. When we say data fungibility, that when you say exchange information requirement, BIM-GIS integration is a key part of that. So making that level of awareness possible is kind of also the goal of this for every use case. So we're going to start by attacking at the use case level. So hope that's clear. So there's work to be done beyond this. And in the next meeting, we hope to report on where the working group is and how did we prioritize and what our next steps are. But a big call for the community is the strategic working groups or the steering groups will be membership drawn from both these communities, as I've said, but they can have friends. And the friends are the people that are the most urgent need to solve a specific use case. So if you really are interested in it, we invite you, and I think we'll try to figure out a forum where these meetings are open, for your input. So I think that's the plan. So I think that's kind of where the next steps are. So that's also a call to action for you to keep following us. And thank you for participating in all these summits. Every time this room is generally full. And I think that just shows that there's general interest in the industry, and we want to continue to build on that. So that's my final word. Anything to close? Okay, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your conference.